Okay, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Startups IRL, brought to you by Founders Persist. And today we are going to be covering the learning curve in startups and employee expectations. So I think that that's a very topical discussion today. And today we are joined by Adam and Justinas, both experts in startups, in team management, and a lot of experience in specifically hiring people for different teams. So I think it's going to be a riveting discussion. So welcome, guys.
Welcome, everyone. Hello.
Welcome. And if anybody has questions in the meantime, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will be covering those as we go along. But okay, let's kick it off. I think that my first question to maybe you, Adam, you can kick us off, is so obviously the employee's journey starts with hiring process, right? And I was wondering, like, in your opinion, what are kind of the most common expectations for both employees and employers at the time of hiring? And maybe you can share some nuggets about like how does that evolve? How does that change over time?
Yeah, I always felt when I was employed that everything is already expected from me from the get-go. So they were literally like, yes, we spent so much time, so much effort, working so hard on getting that like shortlisted people for the final round. So we chose the one who was the best for the thing, So this guy is just like coming in and straight away does the thing. So I always felt it was like some kind of expectation like that from them. I think there is it's definitely like a misconception because if when you're going through the different stages of being hired, then there is like a line manager stage where they are usually like amazed by you and they think that you're going to change the world. Obviously, that's why they hire you. But then you're going to meet the C-suite as well. And they rely 100% on, oh, perfect. So our onboarding process is really cool. So it will do the rest. The guy is going to get to speed really, really fast. So I give you a trick, what I'm usually doing for a couple of years now, like the last couple of roles, So I go really, really slow in the first couple of weeks, because if you start to get speed up to the level of the expectations, you just basically screw yourself over, because it's just really, really difficult to like live up to the expectations from the get-go. So I'm naturally slowing down the process, asking a lot of questions, almost like acting dumb, I would say, almost acting dumb, is just to slow down their expectations as well, like how fast they are expecting me to pick up everything, practically.
So that's a very controversial advice, Adam, I would say.
That's why
Slow
I'm here.
down.
I would like to give the real thing.
Exactly. No, listen, like I sympathize, but what I would say is I struggle in those first few weeks to, to kind of like manage these expectations and so on, is because sometimes you get like so excited and everything is new and everything is, like everybody's new and so on, and you have so many ideas about
Yeah.
how to improve things and so on. So it's a little bit also work with yourself of like, calm down, take it easy, like it's gonna be fine. There's always gonna be work to do and so on.
Yeah,
But
but
teams also here.
you don't want to be the person who's coming in and saying everything is crap, isn't it? Because you will come across quite bad, You're just like coming
Well,
and
fair
then,
enough.
oh, there's so much work to do. I've seen so many bad things.
100%, yeah.
Like
But
first week.
Justinas, would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
On which part? Sandbagging or expectations?
Both. Give us the lowdown.
Well, I'm not a fan of sandbagging. I think, especially when it comes to hiring employees. Very often in startup environments, you need someone who already knows the job and can start doing that job quite quickly, right? But I also understand Adam. Maybe it's very expressive way to convey the message. Yes, probably you don't need to rush and project everything you know or did in the past, because expectations of organization might be also a bit different. Maybe you are not expected to replicate what you already know. Maybe you need to do it better because you have more budget, more time, or maybe you need to do it a bit less because you don't have budget and maybe expectations are less. But this is about this sandbagging part, but about common expectations when being hired, for example. Adam talked about employers' expectations. I can talk a little bit more about employee expectations and where things happen and change. Of course, how to put it, everyone expects that they will be brought to a role, be given nice, onboarding. They will be held hand until they are comfortable, and then they are ready to fly by themselves. So this is the ideal scenario, and I don't necessarily think that it's the most productive approach to join, especially startup, because you might be very disappointed. And more often than not, expectations change from this onboarding process, from having full comprehensive picture of what is happening in the company and processes, you end up solving very particular problems. So this is how expectation changes. Very often you expected maybe full nice picture, nice procedures, nice walkthrough, nice slides, but in reality, okay, here's the problem, you start from here, right? And that's okay, I think, right? Because you pick some problem and you build from blocks, because of course you solve problem, you learn about that problem, how you solve it, and that picture grows. So I think very often that speed of how you build that knowledge is actually, it's very gradual. Although, I have also some other experiences from bigger companies where, yes, you can have this type of onboarding, but let's say not every startup will have luxury to keep you on full day training for 2 weeks or even more, right? Usually you're happy if you have 1 or 2 days for onboarding, and then time to roll up your sleeves. So that would be my comment for this question.
100%.
Or a really quick
that
question,
sounds like
go
for it.
Sorry, what just came to my mind, for like both of you, just super excited because I have a really funny story about that. What Justinas just said, when was the fastest time when you realized that you made a mistake? And then I tell you mine because I have like a really funny story about that.
Okay, I think that the fastest time that I understood that I made a mistake was like 2 weeks, and after the 3 months I was gone. So I took a very decisive action when I decided that. Yeah.
Okay, I would say a week, but it was partially because of being very eager to solve problems without knowing full context, but nothing that cannot be resolved. So what's your story, Adam?
Oh, I remember that years ago, like 7 or 8 years ago or something like that, I realized on the first day they made a trick with the job description, and they basically like hired me for something else, what they had they were short of. Practically it was like a little bit of overlap, but it was like not really the thing. And then they started to tell me and onboard me for the different stuff. So I remember that I was like literally standing at High Street Kensington in front of the Sainsbury's, and I literally almost cried. That I was like, going through this whole process, and like the first day, that it's never going to work out. And I literally went back second day and I resigned.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it was easier to continue the search, than just like having false expectations from both ends. They didn't want to hire me for that thing. I would never sign for the thing they needed the person for. So it was just like totally misleading. Was the point of like basically wasting time. I was still warmed up with the search, so I could just literally like carry on.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, that's a very extreme case, but I think in those cases, it's like you just look at it and be like, okay, this is not a fit. It's better for both parties if this ends, earlier in the process. So yeah, 100%. But Justinas, you brought up a very, very important point, which is, I think that sometimes is a little bit overlooked, especially in startups. And that is like onboarding and this whole like, process of how you get somebody actually up to speed and kind of like embedded in the teams and so on. But I think that there's another angle that we can look at it, and that is like in this current age of remote work, hybrid work, how does that onboarding actually look like? And I know that both of you have had experiences and in different companies throughout your careers. Is like, is there anything specific about these hybrid working environments that people should be thinking about in terms of onboarding? Are there any particular challenges or tricks and tips that you can share? I don't know, Justinas, maybe you can carry on with your onboarding storyline.
Well, I did work as a trainer in the past, so it happens it is quite a dear topic for me, onboarding new hires and so on. Yeah, there are things that are just simply must do, and companies very often miss out on very simple basics. And some things you can't even Google, how to do. You don't need extensive training how to train your new hires, right? So few basics, never leave them alone, at least until you have confidence, right? Meaning what that means, make sure you have buddies assigned, because, but this informal part, I'll get back to it, but have training plan. This is number one, because very often trainings proceed, okay, here's colleague X who works here for 5 years. Go sit, they will tell you everything, what to do, and you're good to go, right? So this would be bad onboarding practice, but unfortunately happens more often than we could imagine, right? In reality, I think best practice is plan your onboarding, do it, don't let it just go by the flow, right? Make it plan flow, right? Go topic by topic, which you will need employee to perform or to know, start with basics, go through everything from basic, code of conduct trainings and familiarizing to how to do actual tasks. But again, if you leave everything just for discussion, everything is new, right? People that start talking, sharing experiences, go off the track, start sharing interesting cases, then there is no time for important stuff, and your 2 days of onboarding are done. And then on the third day, you need to start rolling by yourself. So do the plan, stick to the plan. So this is one part. And the other, I think, what is really, I saw more and more companies doing that, but having a buddy system, which is one of really good practices, right? Where even if you train, you cannot have trainers sit with employee all the time or subject matter expert. So assigning a buddy and making this buddy available for that person, right? This is also very important. And a nice tip for team managers, don't think that being a buddy is just on top of already existing duties, right? So buddies, usually they spend quite a lot of time to get these new hires up to speed. So you need also to create that space for these buddies, not to make them suffer because they didn't meet their goals or KPIs that week, because they have time talking and showing which button to click or which system doesn't work as it should, and you should do this workaround, right? And these are very important soft knowledge, not soft knowledge. It's knowledge that you need to transmit. You cannot fit everything there is in training. Of course, you do things, you learn, that knowledge grows. But buddies usually is the best practice to do it. And yeah, that would be a short take from my side.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that you bring up very good points, that like these simple kind of frameworks in the very beginning are essential to ensure that in time that employee can actually like scale much faster and deliver value to the company much faster. So like, even if it takes a little bit more effort in the beginning to put these things in place, they will like pay dividends later down the line. So yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. Adam, maybe anything from your side that you can add on the onboarding topic?
Yeah, we're talking about startups now. So basically, there are not two rigid systems that I've come across in terms of onboarding. Sometimes, like less good practices, they shoved down your throat like a 45-page onboarding manual, which was written in a Word document format with a lot of links you don't even understand yet. You know, where are they going to? You're just clicking on them, and then you're ending up at different platforms, most of those that you're not ever going to use because it belongs to different departments. So I've seen that parts as well. But I think the key here is that when you are hired, you're in charge of the situation as well. So it's not only about like what they give you as a toolkit, but you can literally just propose ideas. What I usually do is that even when I'm working with clients, and then I'm like, I need to understand a bit of their operating procedures, is that I'm just literally saying that, oh, I'm going to spend time with this person at this department, or I'm going to spend time with this person at that department. So basically, you are the one who's picking the trainers apart from the buddy system or whatever they implemented. And then you are the one who can say like what part of the business I would like to understand, because there's definitely going to be some part that you haven't done before, or that is working at this place differently than your previous experience. You literally, I think you're equally responsible of creating your own plan. What would you like to get out? Because you have like, let's say 2.5 weeks when they are like happy to accept anything that you propose, because you are in your onboarding. So you have this short window being able to do that, but then afterwards they may throw at you all the workload. Then you won't be able to like sit with someone for half a day and then understand what they are doing with their part of the business.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that you bring up a really good point around like agency also on the employer side, you know, like taking a little bit of ownership. And I think that in a startup setting, that is a must, right? Like you have to almost assume that there most likely will not be a very rigid or very structured onboarding process, and that you will have to lead charge in so many ways. And I think that especially in this kind of remote or hybrid environment, that becomes even more crucial, because you don't have that much of that in-person interaction with other folks. So yeah, definitely. But maybe like to round up the onboarding kind of a topic, maybe like one key piece of advice that you can share with people starting a new position that has helped you get up to speed in a new company quicker. Like, is there anything that you would be like, oh, this is a must thing that everybody needs to do? Maybe, I don't know, Justinas, you can kick us off.
Okay. About the tip, there's no golden one solution for all situations, but I would say be mindful and see your environment. Is your attune yourself to the speed of your environment. Because I experienced in quite a few companies, everyone is super rushed, doesn't have time. But I also experienced some onboardings where like, okay, why you're rushing, why you're not taking time, why you're not going there, read this policy, read that page, check this product, do some other networking in the organization, right? I think this is very important. Best practice to be up to speed with your role is actually to know to which speed you need to be and reach that speed in tune with the environment you are in, right? If it's very high and you're expected to do a task or deliverable on your first day or first week, of course, probably you won't be walking around the office having chats with people or reading 200 pages long compliance manuals. Probably you will skim through some stuff and go immediately to your problem. But if your organization expects that before you touch something, especially, very important stuff, make sure you are meeting this expectation, because then, if you skip chunk of stuff and make mistakes, those mistakes, might be pricey eventually. So, to you, Adam.
I would add one more thing. I really 100% agree. I think there's like an extra element that you don't be afraid to be dumb and ask dumb questions, because no one is going to look judgmental when you're asking questions that might be like self-explanatory in the environment they are in, because they are so much in the environment for so long that they don't really understand someone coming from the outside, like what they understand from the process, basically. So I think that window is for you to ask every single question, because it would look worse when you're asking it later. So you miss the opportunity and asking it later.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I personally had to learn that lesson, with time as well. I think when I was earlier in my career, I was a little bit afraid to ask questions. And even when I would get an answer and I wouldn't fully understand what the person meant, I would be very timid of asking follow-up questions. And if somebody had explained it in not a very understandable way, I would just end up not understanding that topic. And then 3, 4, 5 months later, that knowledge gap comes back, but then it's more critical because you are running a project, you are doing a launch, you are doing X, Y, Z. So I think that's maybe also a piece of advice to maybe some younger folks on the, who are listening in, is like, really don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. There are no stupid questions, and there certainly are people who are not experts in explaining things, right? People have different ways how they deliver information, and just because somebody has assumed that they have explained something doesn't mean that it has been, explained in a way where people can actually absorb it. So yeah, the question part is definitely crucial. Okay, guys, but I think that there's also a lot of talk, and I think that this is maybe also more kind of pivotal to maybe like organizations in like later stages. But there's always some kind of a manual, at some point in time that helps you with the onboarding. There's some kind of a rigid, Confluence page or something there that you need to absorb and so on. So I was just wondering, like, in your experience, like, what is kind of the real difference in applied work when it comes to practical experience versus these like manuals and playbooks of getting up to speed and actually doing the work? So maybe here, I don't know, Justinas, you could share, because you are compliance expert, so therefore a lot of manuals and a lot of different kinds of frameworks.
Bingo. So Yes, compliance does have usually very many manuals for everything and policies for everything. Yes. So strictly speaking, operating, well, I don't know. Definitely playbooks are important, and playbooks and manuals and standard operating procedures, that's why they are meant, not only to onboard people, but this is your main point of reference, right? If you did, I mean, maybe I will sound a little bit corporate now, but if you did think as it was written in a procedure, well, you did it think right. Quality assurance or other stakeholders, well, they cannot really blame you because you executed the instruction or followed the policy as it was, right? So in new role policy, understanding policies, it's very important, right? Of course, it is not always the case that policies are up to date, because very often it takes a lot of time to write, especially working instructions or onboarding guides, right? Things get changed, tools deprecated, data changes, so many different things can happen. And usually, preparing for that one employee that might come or not come every time there is a system change, usually this not necessarily always happen. So you need to be also mindful and rely on your experience, rely on your buddies, how you navigate certain problem around. Because at the end of the day, yes, it could be just plainly, look, raise this to your manager or to your trainer, look, this what it says in procedure doesn't work. But at the end, I think we need to be a little bit conscious. And there's a little bit what I want to add to this question, which I think is very important and probably is somewhere in the background of your question. Bringing your own experience. It's priceless. Usually, very often, companies will hire you for your experience, right? Yes, but companies are also not blank slate, this tabula rasa where there is nothing happening. Usually, there are already procedures, already tools. So it might also be, how to put it nicely, a bit problematic if you on your day one say everything is nonsense here, this policy or this work instruction or this tool is nonsense and we will do otherwise. Well, that wouldn't be the best or optimal solution. I think it's best always to learn and understand what company is doing, trying to understand why they are doing what they are doing, right? And from there, learn existing process. Start tapping in your experience when you already know process and you are upgrading, improving this process. Or rely on your experience where written documentation ends, right? That's very often what happens. Keep in mind what I'm telling applies in companies that have quite good documentation. Very often it will be, more often than not, okay, you have Confluence page in startup which has one paragraph long procedure, how to handle, I don't know, client complaint. And you need to interpret maybe additional 10 or 20 steps between each sentence, what you will actually click, what you will write, and so on. So in some environments, you will be heavily relying on your experience, and that's okay. That might have been expectation that you are coming there and are able to operate without extensive instructions. But so this is, again, I think it's very important to understand and know your environment where you are, right? If you have detailed procedures, if you have something like quality control, assurance, someone is spot checking things that you did, well, probably it's not the best idea to start improvising or do jazz in your operational work or in your whatever coding work. If there are certain things you are expected to do in certain way, well, maybe try to do at least sometime that thing and then start rewriting it. There might be a point why people are doing what they're doing.
Exactly. Learn the context first and understand the why, and then iterate. Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very good tip. What about you, Adam? What about the manuals?
I have both sides now, basically. So I have experience where I was using the playbooks and the manuals, and now we are in the process of, like, in my own company, that we are creating one, and then I feel a little bit this kind of resistance towards, like, oh my God, it's just like, why are we like getting so much into detail and everything like that? But I set a really, really clear goal for ourselves, basically. So we are going to use the manual documentation more as a like a link tree kind of thing. So basically, like, leading you to the particular documents used as a template, to the particular documents that used in the past, like just recreate that and whatever. So basically, it would be more like a knowledge base kind of style. So that's what we are working with. I had an experience in a scale up where I was basically like working with the marketing team with the sales playbook. And then I spoke to the head of sales, and then he was like, oh, we're not using that for years anyway. I'm just like, okay, but I mean, officially, you still have this. So if I don't want to go to you and waste your time to explain to me what process you are doing, it might work to create a new document for that. I don't want to get to that point, when we are working so hard on putting something together that is, like, extensive, exactly like Justinas said, extensive enough that everyone is just, when it's done, they are like, oh my God, this was one of the biggest achievements we've done ever. I really hope that it's coming back in my nightmares, so we don't even want to touch it because it was so much work that it's just like, yeah, just let that sit there. No one wants to touch it any longer for like 4 years or whatever, So I really don't want that. But I really want to have something internally that is, like, easy to find information in, because that would be originally, like, that would be the goal of the thing, I mean, we are, like, working with really, really short attention spans, unfortunately. So I really want to get to the point where there is the answer to my specific question, extract the information, and just run away with that. If it doesn't do whatever onboarding playbook or manual or whatever, if it doesn't do this simple task, then it's just, like, not functional.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that there's also, you said it very, very, very poignant thing there, Adam. It's about the attention span. Sometimes I find that even if the resources and kind of these playbooks and manuals exist, a lot of times certain people prefer to ask a question to you on Slack, or, catch your attention somewhere over the coffee break and ask the same questions, even though you have this great, amazing manual. So yeah, Justinas, I see you have something to add here.
Actually, I got triggered by what you said. As a past trainer, I wanted just to emphasize for everyone who is learning and who is teaching for new hires, it's very powerful to know different learning styles, right? So today we cannot dive into that, but if you're a trainer, it's probably you will know those, right? If no, go and look it up. But there are many theories and authors writing about it, because again, exactly, some learning types will be exactly who will want, touch everything first, some parts here, some buttons here, until they feel okay. Yeah, and at the very end, they will know the process, but they can be jumping around for particular need, and it's okay. They can synthesize this into somehow coherent process. But some people will be quite linear learners, and they need to go step by step. They need to see it written. They need a screenshot in the manual which says where exactly in that screen it is what you need to do, right? So, and I think most effective. And unfortunately, very often people who are training, they don't have these knowledge, and they just, okay, I will tell you this as a coffee story, or how I what is my learning style. I will tell you the same way to you, right? And very often these styles not necessarily match. You know, someone who is very okay by learning by doing, if let's say I would start now going through theory, telling 1 hour of theory about all possible cases and everything that could happen in that scenario, right? Person will be gone, attention gone in 2-3 minutes, right? Person needs to click things. When there will be problem, person will then look for manual, or I don't know, find a solution. So this is just when you mentioned these learning styles, or I heard it as learning styles related, I thought it's worth raising, because it improves experience so much, right? And I remember teaching some people who had very different approaches, and I'm like, okay, you like to do it by yourself? I'll tell you high level. Here's it's written. Go and try. I will come and check how did it go. Then you raise questions instead of me sitting there telling you what you can, that you actually prefer to read, because it gets embedded in your brain much better rather than listening. You just have your registry is visual, so you read things. That's how you intake information.
Yeah, that's actually a very,
one more
very
thing
good
I wanted
point.
to add. Sorry.
Go for it.
Sorry, one more thing I wanted to add to this is that most of the time, let's be honest, the trainers are not trained, because they are literally just assigned instead of being trained how to train people. So their role predestines them to do the training, because there's no one else who can do it. You know? So it's just like highlighting the need as well. That doesn't matter if you're a scale up or startup or whatever stage you are, you don't necessarily need to have like a structured training, but then go on the internet, because a lot of stuff is there. So then just like train yourself, just to take it seriously, because obviously you are going to have an impact on the performance of the new hire.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And this is exactly my experience. In my experience training, new hires, it's like I do it this one way. So therefore, exactly as Justinas say, I pass that same way on to them. And if they don't get it, then I'm like, well, but I mean, the manual was written. Why didn't you read it? And so on. So yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah. Just maybe on top, and I think we maybe need to move from this topic, but if we are talking about ideas, how companies can create rather easy impact, it's exactly, think of programs, train your trainer, or create a training for your trainers. It could be some HR initiative, or anyone who is enthusiastic about the topic, right? I think if companies, and investment usually won't be very hard. I mean, you don't need to go full depth. You don't need to make everyone pro educators, but if you give some basic core guidelines, setting training objectives, having agenda, having some depository for new hire, where you put all useful links, which on day one they don't understand what it is, but on day 120, this is what it meant, and this is where I have access to it, instead of going all over the place. Some basic things that you can just convey as a checklist for people who will be training in your organization. It can be very easy, but it will multiply every time. It will multiply. And okay, full stop here. Consider this as a cheap investment that actually brings returns that multiply.
I think so too. I think that comes back even to the point that you made earlier, like these early structural things that are simple to implement, then again, pay these dividends early on. Okay, and I think that the last topic that we could cover today is really about this formal versus informal learning. and kind of educational budgets? And is, in your opinion, all work-related education, does it come from formal learning? Is there, space for informal learning? Would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe Justinas.
I'm afraid I will talk too much about this topic, but Adam, do you want to
Okay,
pick this?
we can go over. It's all good.
I'm so happy to listen to your thoughts about this specifically. So I will pass the ball back. Go on.
Okay, I'll try to leave some time for you. Okay.
Yeah, leave for me a minute in the end. I just wrap it up quick.
Okay, we just spend 1 minute. So formal again and informal, right? Yes, to do your task, of course, you do formal learning because you were hired. If we are talking about operations or some other work, where you have something that you can teach. I'm not talking about creative work and so on, right? Okay, so yes, there will be expectation that you will have some training for that, right? Because you cannot expect the employee to follow some standard if you didn't explain what standard is, right? Or at least gave some manual, right? But there is also this part of informal learning, right? And I think this is very misunderstood part in by employers and by employees, where people are doing something that, when I say informal, is more like, okay, this is not provided by trainer or by your manual or even by your company, right? So where you learn work-related stuff, which enables you in the role, but from other channels. So for example, I'll do some unpaid commercial. No one paid me for that, but LinkedIn Learning is very relatively cheap and easy to access way to learn some things that might be super powerful for you at work, and no one will teach you, because let's say this is on the edge of your role, or maybe you were even not needed now, but maybe need sometime later. Once again, I will maybe mention some SQL courses, for example, super easy things like data camp, where you can go and get really good solid basics of just learning SQL, learning how AI works, and super useful things. The same Udemy, also quite powerful platform. It has extensive courses on everything. Yes, I would put this all under this informal learning, right? Because it won't be that your employer will come and ask, oh, why didn't you do this, learn some topic? Unless, of course, you needed to do it, right? No, it's not going to happen, right? But you are not expected, actually. It should be your own goal, to grow your portfolio of what you know, what you can do. So, for example, there were lately some instances where I had to work with topics. I had very generic, very basic idea what it is. Okay, but now I need to do it, right? So what do? I go and search for who can explain how to do it. In my position, okay, there's not much or anyone who can actually explain this. So what do? You go to the wild internet and you find then some courses on these learning platforms, and you spend quite some time learning how to do that particular task. And yeah, so you mentioned also education budgets. I think that companies, not every company is investing in that, but some companies do. So that's, I think, very important for a new specialist in startup, especially if you're early in your career, not to miss out on these opportunities to use those educational budgets. And it doesn't need to be every time that if you're not getting certification, that's not a properly used budget. You use that budget, get LinkedIn Premium, get DataCamp subscription, get Udemy, whatever, right? This money is allocated by company for you to strengthen your profile, to learn crucial things that will empower you in your own role, but maybe not everything they can teach you during onboarding. So this self-motivation, self-driven learning is there, right? So full stop. Sorry, Adam. Can we give Adam a few more minutes? I know we are.
Of course we
No,
can.
I just wanted to say one thing. I'm very, very cautious when I'm hiring anyone, that I want people who are hungry to learn more, to know more, because it is quite an alarm bell in my ears when I need to send someone to understand this and figure out that or something like that. I like when they are coming and then I found this, which could be the solution to that, but I also listened to this podcast and then I heard this could be, because we at the end of the day, we like to be around people who are inspiring us. You need to have some kind of hunger to like get new information to be inspiring, because otherwise you're just literally just like repeating the same thing all over again.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that this like self-reliance theme has also been trickling through our conversation today, and I think that that's one key takeaway that I think everybody can maybe take a little bit of self-ownership in this process as well. And obviously, if you are a trainer, also, as Justinas very rightfully pointed out, also educate yourself of how to become a better trainer and so on. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining today. Justinas, you wanted to say a few last words, please.
Yes, I want to do a promo. So if you were excited about all these wonderful topics of education, onboarding, or you want some brainstorming or share your experiences, please do not hesitate and join Founders Persist community, where we do have deeper discussions on maybe not daily basis, but whenever there is a topic, we join in and discuss. So please feel free, and we encourage you to join our community and
Awesome.
have more extensive discussion.
Exactly. Great promo, Justinas. This was great. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. And and see you next time with another exciting topic. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.